Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious, cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey, good people. Welcome. I'm your host, Andrea Dragonfly, and this is the show Connected. We are on our 48th episode, so it's been fun doing all these shows. And so if you're with me, thanks for being with me. Thanks for walking through this journey. Last week, I was traveling around the big island of Hawaii and was having a very lovely time just exploring, just the whole periphery of the island. And so if you jumped on to see what was happening through Bold Brave Television, I was replaying an episode 23, which talked about sacred union partnerships, because that was really kind of, playing off the tail end of the last live show, which was about Sophia, goddess of wisdom, the bride of God, Mother Earth, right? So this Sophia creation myth. And at the end of the Sophia creation myth, and just a little recap, of course, that I do every show. This is a Gnostic myth that's been around for several thousands of years. And Sophia, the root word of Soph, right, is a Greek word which means the knowledge, right? Wisdom, means wisdom. And so we think about with all of our philosophy, the Sophie of the philosophy is the wisdom of the people, right? Of thought and whatnot. And so we are working with the wisdom of life, of consciousness within a materialized form. So the creation myth is posted on the resources page on my media page and on my website, which is www.andreadragonfly.com/media. And you can look that up for episode 47. And if you haven't seen the myth, I highly encourage taking a look at it, because my sharing of it is not going to be nearly as great as Leila Sophia Tresmer, one of my beautiful teachers and founders of the Star House up in Boulder, Colorado. She does an excellent job of just kind of breaking it down and really helping, whoever is interested in understanding the myth in itself. But this is really the consciousness coming into a materialized form. And so often, if we go back into early history of humanity, and I have to kind of honestly say the early history of humanity might only be a few thousand years ago, where we are, which is not that early. I'm just going to say that. A few thousand years ago, and even 2,000 years ago, is really where we started to actually remove the divine feminine from our understanding of that which is greater than ourselves, our belief systems, our religious beliefs, our cosmologies, our understandings of humanity and the stars and our place within it, right? And so it was really only in the last couple thousand years that the divine feminine has really kind of been omitted. And this is, again, about the unity, the union. And so here we can look at religion, and religion is that the God is outside of ourselves. It's up here somewhere. It's up in the heavens, right? So God is outside of us. And then within the divine feminine, so this is this consciousness. Let me reframe. So the God masculine is outside of us. It's up here above, in the above realm, right? And so then the Mother Earth energy is the below. So the above and the below, and it's the union of the two. So there's consciousness up here, but then there's form down here on the earth, right? Everything comes into form. And so when you unionize both of them, now you have conscious energy and form. And this is where we get life, everything that is alive, right? So, of course, we as humans, all of our animal friends in the animal kingdoms, we have the plant kingdoms, we have the energies of the mineral kingdoms, and then we have, the nature spirits of the landscapes, the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, and this is just the water ones, right? Of the forests, of the deserts and the Saharas, the grasslands. And so we're going to really start to talk about those today. But again, we're looking at the unionization of consciousness into form, so that it's not just, that which is greater than ourselves lives up there. It's both and. If we look around around wherever we are in the world, in order for something to be alive, it needed to have a masculine, feminine quality, right? It needed to be the sperm and the egg. There had to be a conception of some sort. Now, of course, there's certainly asexual plants and things like that, and even animals and things that could create themselves. However, but for the most part, it really is a union of the masculine, feminine coming together for creation, right? And then we have that feminine energy, that very loving, nurturing, caretaking. And if we think about just the qualities of the feminine, and we think about qualities, that, and we can just look at duality, right? And we can look at the light and the darkness. The dark, moist, is usually more the feminine quality. The light sun, so the moon is the night and the feminine, and the sun is the day and the masculine, because that sun is very extroverted and out there and full of energy. And not that we women, as a woman, aren't that, because we are both that. We're all of it. But we show up in these forms, right? We show up in a gendered form. We are born within a certain type of sex so that we can reproduce if our bodies are in a position that can actually reproduce, because some people are not able for different reasons, right? So we show up with the ability to reproduce ourselves, and we also have a gender to have these genderized experiences. And we also have this understanding with multiple life theory. Again, we talked about one life theory versus multiple life theory, that we come back over and over again to understand the full experience of the human conditions, right? The whole gamut of all, expanding our mindsets, right? And really feeling emotionally all the different spectrum of emotions there are to feel, from absolute total love, ecstasy on the highest vibrations over here, to the absolute lowest of the low, despair or shame or whatever torturous energies over down here, right? So we're gonna and it's not up, down. I mean, they're on the spectrum. So however you want to put your spectrum, right? So we're looking at that union. And we're looking at that union. That union is a fractal. And I talked about fractals briefly, and I should definitely, there's a book that's in my bookshelf. I'll probably bring it out next time. Because fractals are systems within systems that mimic each other. They're like recapitulations on a different scale. It could be on a greater scale, and we can look at these systems that move out towards the macrocosm into space, right? Or we can look at on a smaller scales into the microcosm of certain things. So even just our human body is a system of life. And if we can look at our human body as a system of life, we're a small fractal of the system of life that lives within the earth. We can think about our blood and our veins are like the rivers of our great Mother Earth, right? And so we can, so there's different things that are kind of connected to us, and we can see the similarities. So the fractals, and these are all around us. I mean, the secrets of the cosmos are in nature. We're nature. Everything is a version of itself on these different scales. And these are the fractals of different kinds of things, an ecosystem. So our bodies are its own little ecosystem that keeps us alive, right? Each individual has our own, we have all the things that we need in order for us to survive. Well, then we have an ecosystem within an environment. And then we have the greater global ecosystem, the globe. And so those are hugely, jumping from one to another, but these are fractals of one another, right? So anyway, moving forward on that, within the creation myth story, Sophia comes in, and as she comes in, she gets pulled into this gravitational pull. And as she's moving in, she's starting to create with all of this energy. And just like creation of all of this different materialized life with consciousness, because she also is the embody of all of life, right? And so she is, and of course, looking back at the myth, I did review it. She's one of the younger aeons in the whole cosmos for this specific system, our solar system in particular, right? And because we're one of the newest ones. And so she's a younger aeon bringing in this life, again, referring back to the creation myth story. So again, Leela's going to tell the story way better than I. But then through that, at the same time, there's these energies that kind of come off of her that create the duality of our experience in this system and this system of life. So she also creates duality. So where there is creation, she also creates what's called the archons, and they kind of come in and they have this energy of destruction. And so they're really necessary. Again, it's the balance. We're looking for balance. And, and even within, I was talking a little bit 2 weeks ago about the archons coming in, and they can kind of feed off of our emotional energy, our intellectual energy. They can make us feel, they can put us into that place of victimization. Oh, woe is me, whatever you feel that you are having an injustice around, right? Because if we're feeling angry or upset, or if we're feeling some sort of inequality, it's because there is an inequality or an injustice. So there's an injustice here. Well, what is that? Is it, what's taking your creative fire, or what's taking away your knowing that you already are, everything already lives and exists within you, and that we just have to go inside to find it, to bring it forward and use it to create, right? So there's that. And those those archons, 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 they are responsible for that kind of destructive energy. And so really, now there's also, this is the Gnostic form, because if I look at Theosophy, and where Helena Blavatsky, she has a lot of her work, and then Rudolf Steiner has Anthroposophy. So these are these other wisdom traditions as well. We're looking at these archons can also be similar as these other types of energies that have come in specifically to create some of that dark force, the evil of the worlds, that create pressurization and opportunity for us to make choices, right? To make the choice. Let's see how I'm going to go. Where am I going to go with this? Because there's this opens up a lot of additional information, because these spiritual beings, and I've talked about this in some of the other shows that I've done, I mean, they have a necessary role in the evolution of humanity. Their role is to put us at the effect of injustice, of unfairness, to see how long it takes us to make a different choice and to choose the higher path, right? And so when I say choose the higher path, I'm talking about, yeah, I don't like the way that feels, and I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for anybody else. So I'm not going to participate in that behavior, that action, right? That doing. I'm not going to be responsible for hurting others, for inflicting pain or whatever onto others, because I don't want that being done to me. Those are the choices. No, that's a nutshell. And we can think about life in all the different ways, cheating and stealing and all the ways, murdering. There's that whole show I did about the Luciferic forces and the Ahrimanic forces. It's all in there, right? So it's like, how do we show up and take advantage of others? So that's that dark energy. And so this is where we're being the word I want to just say is pressurized. I think about the diamond and the diamond plume, right? And we need heat, and it needs pressure, and it's uncomfortable, and you're being squeezed, and you're in it. And that carbon is turning in. It needs these different kinds of external forces to make it into a diamond. And that's what we are. We're the diamond in the rough, right? We have these externalized forces. And I talk about that Luciferic force being an internalized force of temptation that is constantly tempting us, to go down this darker path of the me, me, instead of the we of, oof, I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for my children and my family and my friends and my community and my city and my state and my nation and my, continent and the world. This is where we get into pollution, because this is part of our conversation today, because these forces are constantly upon us. These forces are shifting and changing in different ways. These forces are are pressurizing us to make new choices. And so again, we're going to say, no, I don't want that for me. I don't want to put pollution into my body to make me sick. I don't want to sit next to that table of people who are smoking cigarettes and all the smoke is going into me. I don't like the way that smells, right? So I want a different table, or I want to, make it so that there's no smoking in this establishment, which is what the world has turned into for the North America, or at least, the United States, right? Not all places, but the United States in particular. So we look at how we want to make these choices for ourselves and for others. And so this is how we're moving in from the Sophionic myth of creation. And of course, that Christos energy, that Christos is the creation energy. It's really that masculine, feminine unity that creates, and we are constantly in evolutionary creation. And we can look back and we can see all of the things that went extinct. But out of them, different things have formed, and different, life has continued, and it might look different. For example, we don't have the dinosaurs in the same way we had, back 65 million years ago, but we still have the dragonfly, Andrea dragonfly. That dragonfly was huge back then. Now it's much smaller. The alligator, crocodile, much larger back then, much smaller this time, right? The megalodon shark, like everything has gotten to be a different size. But things have evolved over that time. So we're going to take a quick break, 2 minutes, as we always do. And in that time, do what you need to do. When we get back, I just always want to remind you, this is a live show. You can call in if you want to. Or not, or you can text and make a comment. We can certainly get it on my end. So if there's any questions, I'm available to answer those questions. There's that live number at the top of the screen. Comment or whatever. If you have any questions about my language, my vernacular is, definitely a little different sometimes. So by all means, all that's available. And when we get back, we're going to dive in and get more into the spirit of the kingdoms of nature and about this feminine masculine unity energy and how we are being tested. So by those darker forces, by those archon energies. So I'll see you back here in 2 minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Okay, so looking at archons, looking at duality, the masculine feminine unity. Now, this is where I'm moving us into what is known as right relationship and harmony. And I'm going to start by talking about the spirit beings that are actually behind everything in nature. And so I'm going to just try to walk us through this. And of course, I have my notes here. So if you see my eyes darting to the side or whatever, they're just trying to help me keep on track, because I'm trying to walk you through this. Because let's say you walk out into nature, whatever's close to your home, like a nature path, right? So what's the nature path closest to your home? And so normally we as human beings, we work on the physical level. We look and we say, oh, look at that. Here's the path. Those are the trees. Here's the plants. So I got to be careful of poison oak or poison ivy, or if there's some sort of plant, that if you get off track, you might get whatever. This is particular for North America or United States, mainland at least, right? And so, so there's certain things that we're seeing because we're experiencing it from an external perspective. It's about what we know. We go in and we see it and we're like, so we're really working with our senses. So we're looking at the nature around us through our sight. Of course, we can smell nature. We can touch nature. We have the different senses that are coming alive, activating. We can even taste nature, right? We can pick up a leaf, stick it in our mouths, whatever, right? And so we have this external perspective when we are starting to walk into our little nature area. Now, the thing I'd like to encourage is that we take off the veil. There's like, we can't see what's behind the veil because we're just connected to what we know, right? So if we can say, all right, I'm going to take my sense veil and I'm going to move it to the side. And now I'm going to start to connect with nature on a different level. Now we're moving into what's called the etheric. So the physical senses is like this physical body of ours, right? So it's the external, the layer that is part of this human experience, and most people only live in this level, right? If you don't know meditation, you don't know all these other things, you don't know how to get into these other layers. So there's many layers to this. And so the next layer is actually what would be called the layer of the nature spirits. And so I'm going to just pull up my notes here. So again, if you see me looking over to the side, that's what's happening. So this is what would be known as an etheric layer of energy. It's about multiplicity and plurality. It's the realm of multiplicity and plurality, meaning there's all sorts of things that are going on behind the scenes that we're unaware of. It's the etheric energy. Now, when I speak of etheric energy, we have our physical bodies, but we have an etheric body as well. And our etheric body holds the imprints that I've been talking about throughout the show, the imprints of our karma, the imprints of our lineage wounds, the things that we've come here to learn, overcome, those traumas that we've been doing and dealing with, those areas of inadequacies or insufficient or whatever, whatever there's going on in our etheric body, our life brings us to the opportunities to heal them, address them, overcome them. That's all within our etheric. Well, in the etheric of nature, we have these beings that are helping everything stay in what we would consider to be harmony or right relationship. There's also a word that is the Quechua or Quiaro word of South America, known as Aini. And it's also in Hawaiian, that word is Pono, and they all have a slightly different kind of, take on it. But really, it's about reciprocity. It's about when you give this energy comes back and returns to you. It's almost kind of like the laws of karma of rebalancing too, right? But it's not karma. I just want to say, I shouldn't have said that because I want to confuse you. Sorry. But it's about, what I give to you is going to come back to me. If I give you love, love is going to come back to me. If I take care of nature, nature is going to take care of me. And these nature spirits are doing that. They're behind the scenes doing that. Now, of course, we have the elemental nature spirits. And so if we're starting with, let's start with the fire. So the fire beings are going to be, according to anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner, and I only really know it through him, is he calls the nature spirits the salamanders. But they're not the salamanders. Okay, we know what a salamander is. It's it's part of the amphibian family. Part of the amphibian family. And, it's regenerative. It's kind of like something similar to, a toad or, a frog and whatnot, but it lives within that amphibious, family. But it's also an energetic that goes beyond that, right? And so for whatever reasons, the salamander, of course, they're the representation, they're the archetype of energy for heat. Now, there's many different types of elementals, and so I'm using the salamander as one example because there's going to be others as well, right? Well, yes. And so they're going to be coming, and they're part of whatever heat is needed. So a seed needs to germinate, and the heat is required for that seed's germination process. These are the spirits that are kind of there to come and take, make sure that all of this part of life is moving along and going according to what is needed so that life continues on, right? So it's part of the germination process. And again, all over the world. So it's not just in your environment, but think about how these beings, these nature spirits, are going to be in every type of environment in its own way to make sure that life is actually continuing. If it needs the heat component or where it needs the heat component. Now we have what's next is we have the water. And the water element are also known as the undines. And so these are the water spirits. And so I'm going to go back to the heat for a moment, just because I forgot to mention this, but heat can also be in the hot places, the geothermal pools where different bacterias are being formed, right? Excuse, my nose itches, so I'm going to just do that for a second. It could be in the volcanoes. It could be where certain things are hot and humid, and that hot, humid climate where life happens. So those are going to have some of those, definitely the heat nature spirits, possibly working with the water too, right? So here's where we get the mist. Humidity is going to have a certain amount of moisture. So here we have the undines, and they could be in the rivers, they can be in the wells, they can be in the oceans. And so any area where there's water, but there's so many more. That's just a representation of the element, and they have a consciousness. And it's almost like they're the ones that are kind of like, all right, it's about a hierarchy as well. There's this hierarchical energy. So they're the ones that says to all of the other water nature spirits, okay, is everybody doing their job? And if not, what's happening? What needs to happen in order for this to happen? Because we have to keep life moving, right? And so there's the water, and they're part of the mist. They're part of the, if the waterfall and it's misty and all that, the waters are necessary for life. So there's this energy and consciousness that lives in that. There's a consciousness that lives in the ocean, that lives in the river, the lake consciousness. And then throughout history and throughout stories, Lady of the Lake, which is, like a goddess type of woman, who is part of the King Arthur legends of England, so there's all sorts of different stories. The Loch Ness Monster, which is really, a myth of, a nature being, a nature spirit guarding the lake, right? So there's all sorts of spirits that cultures will name them throughout time and history, right? So that is all part of, but the undine energy is actually the conscious energy of the higher divine that works with the spirits that are really in all these different places. And then we have the earth beings. And these earth beings, these are the ones that really take form. So water is not going to take form in the same way that the earth nature spirits are. And these are the gnomes. But so many different cultures might see them as, there's so many of these. Because they could be the gnomes, they can be the elves, and they can be the... So even with the dwarves could be part of the fire, right? Because they were always working the forges, working the fire, and which needed was the core, the center of the belly of the mountain, right? And so, with the nature spirits, here we're looking at the brownies, we're looking at the sprites. With the air spirits, those are known as the sylphs, the winged ones, and the fairies can be part of that. Right? So we have the elf, and now different cultures are connecting into these in different ways. But again, these are kind of like these foundational energies that have been around since the beginning of creation. The different names that have come about are now cultural. how the communities of people have identified and worked with them, the spirits, and naming them in their own way, right? But they have this energetic that has always been there. And also, when we are starting to pollute our waters, our earth, right? When certain things are happening, our air, these factories, you know. And so when we have capitalism coming in the way that it has over the last several decades, and the environmental protection acts and things like that that have been put in place to try to help nature allow itself to continue to grow and thrive, this is where those archons come in, right? Now these are just, again, this is the second layer, this is the veil. So when we pull away the veil, here are these nature spirits that are living in these different places all over the world and all of these different landscapes, right? So you're going to have the earth landscapes, the water landscapes, the fire landscapes, the air. Now they're all working together, right? You know, earth and air and fire, earth, air, and fire, you know, is volcanoes and stuff like that. Like, so they're all mixing together, and, you know, so they're all part of, they're interwoven into one another. They're just going to have the dominant energies there, right? Okay. So those are our spirits. And then we also have others, like we have the Yeti and we have the Sasquatch. And these are those energies that different peoples, and there is a consciousness to them, right? There is a being of nature that we can't see. They don't exist within the physical, you know, we can't physically see them in the way that they potentially have existed. But their stories and their lore come back from the time of Atlantis, come back from the time of when these beings were actually in a physical form, but not as densified as these bodies. And again, I haven't talked about this yet. This is part of some of these last shows I'm going to be doing, and I'll be talking about the densification of these bodies, right? And how we've not always been like this. We've evolved to be like this. So these other beings have come at a time before this particular stage of our physical development, right? So now, if we actually peel back another veil, or just pull back, I don't want to say peel back because that sounds weird, but if we pull back another veil, we enter into another realm of energy beings. We enter into the realm of what would be connected to the astral body of the earth. And so this is the realm of the, let's see. Give me just a second to find my place here. Okay. So these are the spirits of the rotation of time, right? So there's spirit beings. And again, now these are bigger and more vast beings. And they're the ones responsible for the rotation of time. So this is, again, these are going to be connected with everything that has to do with rhythmic cycles, and the repetition of time. And so we have different hemispheres, right? So the northern hemisphere is going to be experiencing a different cycle and rotation of time, and the beings in the northern hemisphere are doing a different job than the beings in the southern hemisphere. Because of course we know summer and winter are going to be, you know, one's in the north and one's in the south, or, you know, like they're going to be flip-flopping during the rotation of time and the equinoxes. And so there's these beings that are also very much helping springtime come into the spring awakening. And we talked about this even when I was talking about the wheel of the year, the calendar of the year, right? So those beings are there. There's the beings that come in and they usher in the death process of fall and the end of the harvest. But there's also beings that live tropically where there is no seasonality in the same way as you're going to have in the north and in the south extremes, right? Because everything's about latitude and longitude and all sorts of things. And some things just grow nonstop regularly. And those have a whole different kind of relationship to the beings as well. But these also will move through periods of time, and they are also about, so rotation of time, we're talking about evolution. We're talking about major epochs of time, even where we go through the Pleistocene, the Pliopleistocene, into the Holocene. Currently, we're in the Holocene. So these are things of, these are huge, you know, chunks of time that represent what is the common life at that time, right? Because right now we're in the Holocene. We don't have the woolly mammoth anymore. We don't have the saber-toothed tiger anymore. We don't have, so that's where the Holocene started, is when those larger creatures died and things got smaller. And now we've moved into a different epoch of time for who knows how long, because what we're doing with all the carbon emissions and with the greenhouse gases and stuff is we really are changing things, right? The polar bears are definitely going away, whether we like it or not. But, a lot of other creatures have gone through their cycle of life and death for new things to be birthed out of that. Now, does it hurt our hearts? My heart, I can speak for myself, to know that there's lots of creatures that are going extinct right now because we're now entering into a global warming stage, regardless if our current, government administration wants to acknowledge that. It's happening. And, we can sit in many different seats around that to say, okay, well, how do I want to be with this? Evolution is part of that. But these are the beings of the rotation of time, and they're also very much at play. They're also, at the same time that things are going extinct, new things are birthing into creation. We see a lot of this, especially in the oceans, in the rivers, or I don't know about river, well, water for sure. But then we have new species. And then as humans are the main cause of so much change that's happening on the planet in these different environments, so much of our rainforest has already been cut down for farmlands of cattle and certain types of crops that are absolutely going to affect everything about, the Amazon is our lungs of the earth. I talked about how, the rivers are veins that flow blood throughout our body. Well, the Amazon rainforest is the lungs of the planet. And when we're carving out big chunks of the Amazon for single or monocropping, which is like one crop or two crops growing at it, and cutting out the depth of diversity that is so essential for everything to flow in harmony, we are absolutely putting ourselves in a place of disharmony. We are moving out of right relationship. Everything right now is about money. It's about wealth. It's about the distribution of power. Everything that's happening right now and the destruction of our planet has to do with the extraction of resources. And since 1985, this is through Pachamama.org or PachamamaAlliance.org. I'll put this in the resources for the media page for this show. But PachamamaAlliance.org, they have incredible, informative classes or something, that you can get involved in just to see what is really going on and how you can contribute to being a player of doing your part into whatever you can to become, harmonious again with nature. This is us moving back into it. We have to do so much more than recycle. We actually are being called, these beings, these nature spirits are calling us into action. They're calling us and saying, we're moving out of balance. And by all means, they will carry on. However, we will be the ones that suffer. We're creating it to be much more difficult for us. Mother Earth will prevail. Mother Earth will prevail for as long as we humans need her to be here. Because there's also the theories of what are, who we are, where we're going, and when we all evolve, and we are evolving out of these human densified bodies, and we finally go through the process of what we know as the ascension. Where are we ascending to? We're ascending back to our spirit, unity with the greater cosmos. We're ascending out of the ego physical experience of life into a higher state of being, but we are far from that. Because every human being, in order for us to ascend out of these physical, human flesh bodies, the very last human has to choose harmony, love, compassion, forgiveness, the Christing way. Love, kindness, generosity, goodness, the goodwill. And we are right now not at that point. We're like 50-50 still, or maybe even out of balance. Sometimes I often think that, oh my God, I think that the dark energy of selfishness and greed and power, control, and manipulation has the scales still tilted to be like 70-30 sometimes, right? I don't know, but sometimes that's how it feels. So we got to flip those scales so it's 70% we are people of love and 30% people of, pain and greed and whatever it is that has people feel so separate and isolated. Anyway, so here we are. We're in this process. So I'm going to move into the next veil, because after the rotation of time and the spirits that really hold us for that, we move into the spirit of, it's the planetary spirit. And the planetary spirit really is that Mother Earth, that Pachamama, that Mother Gaia, also known as Sophia. That is the creation energy that has direct relationship with the cosmos. It's working with the celestial bodies, because we are very much at the effect of the movement of the stars. And when I say the stars, I'm talking about the planets, actually. We're at the effect of the movement of the planets. And of course the stars, and so, the planets for a long time have always been considered to be, especially through astrology and whatnot, when the umbrella is, working with the stars. These are star beings and star nations and all sorts of things, but they're planetary energies as well. So again, I'm confusing you. I apologize. But the planetary movements have huge forces on us. I've been talking about astrology since the beginning, even though I'm not an astrologist, astrologer. But the astrology. So these beings, and so all of this is happening for the Earth right now too. So the planetary being is that being of creation. It's that being of the Pachamama, which is the word for the great mother in the indigenous of the Americas, of Mexico, Central America, South America. Gaia is the name within the Western kind of world of Europe and whatnot, right? Mama Tierra. And so there's many, many names. Now, there's also, so I just want to bring her in. And I'm just noticing that I didn't have my break, which is perfectly good because we only have a little bit more minutes here. So that's why if I look distracted, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I think we were supposed to have a break there. But anyway, we're good. We're going to keep on going into the end here. So what we have is we have this planetary being energy that actually is, again, connected to the planetary beings, the zodiacal beings, to the star beings, but again, even to the greater, higher beings of the angelic realms, and then even beyond that. And we haven't talked about like God, goddess, like the creation of all, right? So there is a relationship there, a relationship with the cosmos, a relationship that says, yeah, you know what, at this time, there are certain things that are happening on our planet. We're being pressurized, like I mentioned before, because we have to make different choices. That all of these beings, all of these allies that are much bigger than us, are here to help us and squeeze us and pressurize us and make us feel really comfortable to make those choices, to actually begin to care about our planet. You know, so many people are saying, oh, it's too late. We've already done so much damage. And in some respect, yes. You know, our future generations are going to be experiencing things that are really going to be quite devastating, but Mother Earth will still prevail, but we have to make these choices now. And so this is where we're moving in again to that Pono, to that right relationship, to how do we actually move in to creating a different relationship with the world, and how do we inspire others to do it as well? Because people don't change when you tell them to. You need to inspire them to. Change happens through inspiration. The inspiration to want to do more, to want to get involved, to want to stand up and say, hey, guess what? We're not going to let big corporations do this to our environment anymore. We're going to demand or command that these bigger corporations take accountability for their footprint. Just like every one of these corporate, big billionaire companies, they're still making the tons of money, especially with these tariffs that are coming through. And it's we, the people, that have to be at the effect of it. And it's about the unity, us coming together in the unity that says, yeah, guess what? We're not going to play your game anymore. We want to actually ally with nature. We want to ally with that which brings back unity, right relationship, Pono Aini. And again, the Quechua word, I'm going to put my glasses on because I'm at the very end of my show here. Aini means reciprocity or mutualism, signifying a principle of giving and receiving in balance. Where are you in balance? Where are you not in balance in every area of your life, not just with nature, with your relationships with other people too. I've been working this one with myself. So it's essentially, it comes down to the future. Like what I do today's for you, tomorrow's for me. If I do this for you today, tomorrow, it will come back to me. Pono is the Hawaiian word which means balance, integrity, righteousness. To achieve excellence with prosperity and equity. So it's also refers to a state of being in harmony with oneself and others and the world. And so this is what's happening. And we're going to lead this into next week, where I'm going to show you and share with you more about what these spirits are saying, because they're communicating to us now, and we don't know always how to listen. However, I've been being deeply connected to this. This is the whole reason why I'm in Hawaii, and this is the whole reason why this whole part of the show has moved, and my life is changing because of these beings, and connection and communion, and working with the land guardians who are saying, now's the time for change, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move the rest of this conversation to next week. It's always an absolute pleasure to bring this information out, to take it in. My invitation, take it, let it fill you, let it work you, let it inform you. Remember this, there's so many different ways we can come at these conversations, but let it inspire you even, right? So you can go to my website, AndreaDragonfly.com, and check out the media page. I'll put the Pachamama Alliance down there for you to check out some more things. Any other kind of information that I have about these nature spirits, I'll tag over there as well. If you want to reach out to me through my different sites, through Facebook or Instagram, it's usually the connected at Dragonfly, whatever. I'm so bad at that. And as always, I wish you all a deeply connected relationship with the world around you for this week and every day to come. So be connected. Thank you. Enjoy.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.